Hi, welcome to Business Success Podcast. Today you've got me, James, instead of Adriana.
Jonathan.
We're father and son. Luckily, can't really tell. The resemblance isn't there.
I'm a bit nervous about what questions you're going to ask, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit, it's going to be very unusual for me.
Yeah, well, we're having a good chat on the way in, actually, weren't we? And we're sort of just talking about new business owners getting into an unknown marketplace. Let's just dive straight in. What would be for a new business owner wants to have a new business? What is the best way for him to sort of get into a new market?
Really good question. So I think on this one, because it is a father and son podcast, I'm going to talk about stuff that you might know something about, although you were very young at the time. But example really is the farm, like your uncle. And I was never brought up on a farm at all. And I was working up in Nottingham, managing really great business, having a fantastic time. Whereas my brother and my father they come out of what they did. My father came out of the forces and so forth, and my brother joined him into a farming venture that started in Shropshire with a pig farm and ended up in Cornwall with a dairy farm. And so what they did was they had about 70 odd pedigree British Frisian animals and so forth.
70
odd, yeah. But it's not a lot, actually. You can't make a living out of that these days. All right.
Okay.
And so unfortunately what happened was that he got diagnosed with cancer. And obviously that got me involved because my parents didn't want to give up the farm. They didn't want to change direction at all. But they wanted the farm to continue. And so putting on my business hat, I was thinking to myself, well, we need to check to see if this is viable. And so the first thing you do when you look at a business, and I had no previous knowledge about farming. I've never been brought up on a farm.
Wow.
I knew nothing about cows and pigs and sheep and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing I did was this is when you take on any new enterprise where you've got very little information. I did my market research. And I looked at the finances of the business, and I've got to say, James, they weren't attractive. And then I looked at the hours, right, that you'd have to do to be a farmer, and that was less attractive.
What was that like?
Well, it's like 7 days a week, and my brother was getting up at 4 a.m, and he was working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And then I sort of asked my brother, how many days holiday do you get a year? Holiday, he said. We don't take holiday. And I thought, this is not a business I want to be. So I never wanted to go into farming. So I came up with a solution, all right, of if I could understand how the farm operated, I could put a farm manager in, couldn't I?
Yeah.
And stay in Nottingham, which was a great city.
Because you were already in business for a while before going into the farming, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, from the age of 25, I've been managing businesses around the country, and I was pretty well settled in Nottingham, to be honest, which I had great friends, a great social life and so forth.
Yeah.
And what I wasn't prepared to do is swap that fun side of my life for the isolation of going into farming. Yeah. So for me, I had to think about, okay, I've got to look at this as a business, you know, and is it something that I want to do? And the answer was no. Okay, so the first thing you need to do, and what I did was I looked at the market, I looked at the finances, I looked at actually what the workload was, I looked at the people operating the business, I looked at the quality of the cows, I looked at, in actual fact, the land as well. Could it sustain the number of animals it had? And the thing was, as I was like investigating all this, obviously my brother was getting further ill, and he was going in and out of hospital. And I thought, time's not on my side. So every weekend, I used to come down from Nottingham onto the farm down in Cornwall, and just go through with him the basic stuff. Because what I found really quickly was he knew how to operate the farm.
Yeah.
And he was a technician on the farm, so he knew everything about everything. No one else did, not even my father. So I'm thinking, what if the worst scenario, and because I never thought he'd die, you know, I always thought you never think your brother's going to die. You think he's going to go, live forever, for instance. He was 3 years older than me at the time. and he was at the age of 30. So the thing was that I sort of like followed him around the farm. And I'll be honest, it was like getting blood out of, water. Was it blood out of a
Blood out of stone.
Yeah, blood out of a stone, really. Because he had the mentality that if he knew it, I should know it. But I knew nothing about farming. So I had this little book. And as I was going around, so how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? How do you do that? And it was simple things about like, how do you prepare for milking? How do you milk? What do you look out for milking? How do you feed the animals?
Geez, so every weekend you would travel down from Nottingham to Cornwall and just follow him around. So you do your normal work on the weekend, you travel down, write everything down on how to do it. So you'd write down all the operations of how it functioned then, how it operated.
Everything, even the finances, who do you buy what from? Who do you get your silage made by? When do you make your silage? And all this sort of stuff. And I put it into an operations manual.
Okay.
All right. So everything you did as a technician, you could do. But there were other things he could not teach me because they weren't happening at that time. It could be things like mastitis or foot trimming or dehorning or calving, or if a cow's got calcium deficiency. There's stuff that he couldn't teach me because they weren't happening at the weekends when I came down. So the thing was that I had this operation manual, which is great. I looked at the finances and I looked at the business, and eventually when he did unfortunately die, the problem came to me. And despite me trying to encourage my parents to sell up and get out of farming, they wouldn't. And I just felt like I had to do a family commitment. So I gave up my dream job in Nottingham, came onto the farm, and literally had the plan of actually running the business. So I completely knew the technical side of it. So I could put in a farm manager, so I could go back to what I loved, working commercials and so forth like that. Well, unfortunately, I got through, to cut a long story short, I got through 3 farm managers, all right, who were very good at the job, were ideally picked to actually run the farm. But unfortunately, my parents always found a fault with them.
I was going to say 3. so you only need 1, right?
Yeah, and they couldn't really get on with my parents nitpicking for certain things about they did that wrong or they did this right, and in the end, so I took over the running of the farm, 100%, and that was really, really hard, to be honest, because you come down into Cornwall. I'm not Cornish, okay? You got no friends.
Yeah.
You've got no life. I wasn't even married, so I not met your mother then, So it was like coming into a island of isolation.
Yeah.
And then I sort of re-looked at the business, and I thought to myself, how can I reduce the operating costs of the business and grow? So one of the things I did was I thought, well, I'm paying too much money for concentrated food that I'm feeding the animals. So how could I give them more silage? So on that basis, I bought another 50 acres of land, and to give myself more silage over the winter, and in days like we're going through a drought a little bit, aren't we? And so forth. And probably the grass is not as nutritious as it should be.
That's quite scary, isn't it? Sort of like spending to then benefit yourself later on.
Yeah, but I mean, it was an investment. It was an investment.
Yeah.
So I bid for this 50 acres of land, and because it worked, that in actual fact, I came into the bidding room. No one knew me, and I just came into the bid, and I sort of like slowed the whole bidding up because no one actually knew who the heck is this new bidder coming in. So I got it at quite a good price, to be honest. Yeah.
Good.
But what happened was, by actually giving the cows more silage than concentrates, I was actually saving myself something like £50,000 a year.
Jeez.
And this was back in the 90s, because the period we're talking about when I took over the farm was 1991. And unfortunately, and through no fault of myself, I happened to pick the worst 10 years in farming history for dairy farmers, when there was the breakup of Milkmark. They had BSC, foot and mouth, everything. And we saw the price of milk. When I took over the farm, the price of milk was something like 32p a litre.
Yeah.
By the time I exited it, it dropped to 14p a litre, which is actually below the cost of a bottle of water.
Wow.
And it just wasn't sustainable. And in that time, because I looked at it and I thought, right, I need to get my costs down. So I bought more land to reduce my concentrates. Um, the first year, I invested a lot of money in veterinary services, who taught me how to carve, dehorn, foot trim, do mastitis, deal with a cow that goes down with calcium deficiency, and any other problem. Because, like business, you've got to look after your people. And certainly, okay, I had a couple of people working for me, and I did look after them, and they stay with me long term, which was great. But you have to look after the animals as well, you know, because if you don't, they're not going to perform for you.
Because they're your real cash flow, really, aren't they?
They are your cash flow, you know, and if you look after your animals, they will look after you. And so we never ever made them overproduce. They stayed longer with us, so they had a longer life with us than most Holsteins. You see the great big black and white Holstein cows. Ours were just pedigree British Friesians, which is smaller, and we increased the herd from it was 70 odd, okay, in that period to over 240. And despite actually doing all that expansion and all that increase, it still wasn't a viable business when the price of milk dropped down to 14p a litre.
But because you obviously follow around the veterinary people, and I don't know if that's the right term.
Yeah, the vets.
The veterinary people. But you were able to sort of cut down on those costs as well, obviously, because you were able to see how to do it yourself. I mean, obviously there were things you wouldn't be able to do, but you could do a lot of it yourself, right?
Well, the biggest difficulty is, like, it was going into a new business, okay, and I had no proper technicians. I just had some people who could milk and some people who can clean up the yards, but I had no technical expertise. So I actually thought, right, instead of paying for these experts to come onto the farm, which would actually cripple us, I need to learn how to do the technical work. The idea is, if we were able to carry on farming, I would have been able to pass that technical ability on to someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. But on this occasion, I had to be the technician. And that's not always the best thing to be in the business, because that's very time consuming. So I even got myself qualified as a artificial inseminator. Right. So I was doing everything on the farm.
Okay. Careful with this, guys.
It's going to stay where it is. But I mean, the beauty of it is, and you can relate that to business, because in actual fact, I was able to improve the conversion rate of female calves, because obviously you can't milk a bull, so a male calf, you know. So obviously, but I was able to actually, because I was taking it all in house, I was actually able to improve the percentage of female calves on the farm. I was able to actually reduce any problems when it came to calving. Over a 10-year period, I only had one calf die on me. Wow. Because I created a system where, like a maternity ward, that was close to the house. So we didn't have CCTV cameras, and I wish we did, to be honest, you know, but literally if I knew a cow was due to calving, you know, I was on it. I was making sure that, you know, I was there or thereabouts and all that sort of stuff. So we did a lot on that farm. And I know you knew the farm, because I used to bring you on there when you're a little one. I used to put you on my back in my rucksack, and, you know, and go around, and you saw a lot happening as a little kid, you know, and even let you drive the tractor. Oh yeah, you know, and I'd sit on the step, and you used to cut the weeds for me and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
I mean, but I just wanted to sort of say, I remember one of the stories. I mean, this is a bit off topic, about you helping, like, just we were talking about, you know, calving cows and stuff like that. About when you saw you were driving along, you know, and you saw the cow in the field, and just, I know you know what I'm talking about.
I know what the relevance of this is.
A bit of entertainment. Well, just quickly go through that. What happened with that one?
Well, yeah, this was when I was in Nottingham. I was coming to see help on the farm at the weekends and stuff like that. And unfortunately, my brother wasn't on the farm. He'd gone to hospital for treatment. And my dad was somewhere in the house. And I was driving. I'd come straight from a client up in Nottingham. So I had a brand new company car. I had a nice new suit on. I drove into the farm, and driving along the lane, I saw a cow that was detached from the rest of the herd. And that is a warning sign that something's happening there. And I could see it sort of moving its head left and right, lying down. So I thought, well, it's obviously in stress in some way. So I'm not sure if I say anymore, but the thing was, I got out of the car, had a look. I could tell from a long distance away that it was having trouble carving,
Yeah.
you know.
So what did you do?
And well, I couldn't. Well, I had the options: go to the house, get changed, or
That would take time.
that would take time. And time when a cow is carving
gotta be
is of
quick.
the essence. So
Gotta be
yeah,
quick.
it got to be quick. So I actually stripped right down to my underpants. I ran across the field and barefoot, which is not a great deal when it's full of cow pats and everywhere and stuff like that. Got to the cow, and the calf. It was trying to give birth and so forth. But I noticed the placenta was wrapped around the nose of the calf, and obviously the feet were stuck. So I had to push the calf back in, and then pull the calf out. And eventually, when I pulled it out, it came with a whoosh and all the guts and placenta, and I was covered in mush, stuff like that. So I couldn't get back to the car. So I couldn't get in the car because I was completely covered in grass, mud, cow pats, placenta, goodness stuff. So I went to see your grandfather. All right. Knocked on the door because I wanted a bucket of hot water. He nearly had a heart attack because I looked like roadkill, and that was it. I got cleaned up. But
so it's fair to say that you're quite hands-on with business. And
that's the same. It's the same with our HR and marketing. We do get ourselves involved. Okay, we don't just hang about and if we see something, there's a problem, we like to get in there and solve it there and then.
I mean, I know, like I've heard you mention this a few times, and you're sort of briefly mentioning it on the way up about like an exit strategy.
Oh, nice one.
And I'm not really involved in business. I'm from like a TV background, so I don't really know like what a business exit strategy is. And for me, like if you're starting like a business or you're in a business, you sort of expect it to be like a longevity. What is the use of an exit strategy, and like how do you implement it?
Well, every business should have an exit strategy, whether you start it, whether you're in it, whether you're coming to the end of it. The benefit of an exit strategy is it gives you choices. And if you look at an exit strategy as to what do I need to do to improve the operations of the business so I can sell it and make it attractive. So if you think about it, when I stepped into the farm, it was not an attractive proposition because my brother had no holiday, he's working all hours, and financially it wasn't that great. Okay, so he had no exit strategy. He was just doing tomorrow was the same as yesterday and the day before. And so it was quite a mundane job and so forth. So the thing is, the whole point of an exit strategy is in case things change. Now, when I went into the farm and took over the farm, and it was for 10 years, and we had an exit strategy. And had we not had the exit strategy, I think my parents would have actually become homeless, to be honest, because financially it just, there was no money in it. Okay. And
so it's all about making it like look valuable for when there isn't like an external circumstance. Well, so you're able to sort of sell it on.
If you need to come out of business, all right, you need to come out without debt.
Yeah.
All right. So an exit strategy, it gives you the opportunity to sell it, pass it on to maybe a family member in a good state, or sell it for good money. So you can actually use that money to go into another business or retire on. Okay. So my exit strategy on the farm was really quite simple. It was if the price of milk dropped below the level that prevented me from giving my cows the level of husbandry that I wanted to give, that allowed me to sleep comfortably at night, I was out.
Sure.
And certainly when the price of milk dropped, because with the breakup of Milkmark and milk became very commercial and price led and so forth. When that dropped from 32.5p a litre to 14p a litre, there was no money in that business. Okay. And when we were hit by, and we didn't suffer from foot and mouth and BSE, mad cow's disease, on the farm, but because other farms did, that affected the price of our carbs, and our produce and stuff like that. So that affected us. Okay. So the thing is, the exit strategy, I came out because I did not want to run a farm that I wasn't putting my cows, or in business, my people first.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the reason why I came out. And when I did exit I've got to say, your grandparents were not supporting me on it.
I've heard the stories, yeah.
But when I did come out, I came out and it was to secure their remainder of their life and so forth. And 2 years after I'd done it, both of them had come up to me separately and said that was the best decision I ever made. And that was down to having an exit strategy.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And I think that's what we have time for. So thank you very much for joining us on today's podcast. And
thank you, James.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cheers, Dan. Bye.